This week's study hall is coming from atop a tall building which I leapt in a single bound using my amazing superpowers. And a green screen. Greetings, true believers, and welcome back to another episode of Max Scoville's Study Hall. I'm your host, Max Scoville, and Study Hall is the show where I take a specific topic that relates to video games or a video game and make a bunch of related recommendations of other pop culture media that is worthy of your attention. The fine folks at theinternet.com told me that this week is Global Geek Week, I guess, and today in particular is devoted to superheroes, superpowers, and the super weird, which is fine by me, because that's what I'm into every day. So this episode, I'm going to recommend a few of my favorite examples of superfiction that do something a little bit out of the ordinary. I guess I should probably find some way to relate this to video games. Okay, fine. In terms of gaming, there's no shortage of superpowered characters, obviously, but the nearest one on the horizon is Saints Row 4, which will be out in a couple of weeks. And since the last 3 Saints Row games weren't ridiculous enough, 4 has decided to give the player superpowers, declare them the President of the United States, put them in a virtual reality construct, and then make them fight aliens. Okay, I mean, superpowers alone would have been pretty nuts, but hey, go big or go home, right? For people who want a superhero game that's a little bit more serious, it's probably worth keeping an eye on InFamous Second Son, which is heading to the PS4 next year. You play as a 24-year-old graffiti artist who suddenly comes up on some superpowers in a world where having superpowers is illegal, and while you could, lay low and behave yourself and be cool, where's the fun in that? So hey, let's blow up half of Seattle. Fight the power! It's a little bit too early to tell how Second Son will play out story-wise, but I definitely like the idea of a game that gives players superpowers in a world where superpowered individuals are seen more as threats than as heroes. Also, I want to blow up half of Seattle. Anyway, next up, movies! In a few weeks, Kick-Ass 2 is hitting theaters as the follow-up to the 2010 adaptation of Mark Millar's comic about the adventures of an ordinary teenager who decides to put on a costume and fight some crime for himself. But what if that ordinary teenager was a grown man whose wife left him, so he went around beating up child molesters with a pipe wrench? Well, that's the premise to Super, which is James Gunn's indie superhero movie, which features Rainn Wilson as the DIY crime fighter Crimson Bolt and Ellen Page as his foul-mouthed sidekick Bolty. Super bears some similarities to Kick-Ass, and it might have seemed like a poor imitation of it since it was released a few months afterwards, but it definitely has a much darker tone, so if you're interested in a weird kind of indie look at superhero fiction, you might want to check that out. Next, I know it's not for everybody, but one of my favorite movies about people getting superpowers is M. Night Shyamalan's Unbreakable. A whole lot of people hate it, and I can see how that might have been a letdown following The Sixth Sense, but as much as I hate M. Night Shyamalan for the increasingly terrible movies he's made since, I gotta give him credit for Unbreakable because it is actually a wonderful ode to superhero comics. Speaking of which, obviously, let's talk about some comics. Kick-Ass isn't the only comic by Mark Millar that's been turned into a movie. Millar was also behind Wanted, which was turned into a movie in 2008, and which I actually hate with a fiery passion. As an action movie, it's kind of whatever, but it is so loosely based on the source material that it practically borders on false advertising using the same name. While the movie's about a fraternity of mysterious assassins or whatever in the threads of fate, the comic is about a dude who finds out that the world is secretly run by supervillains and that, oh hey, he gets to be one of them and then go around committing random acts of mayhem and violence and revenge with basically no repercussions because he's a supervillain and they rule the world. Mark Millar's sort of known for focusing on the idea of what if superheroes were in the real world, and he just started a new comic called Jupiter's Legacy with artist Frank Quitely, who I'm quite fond of, that takes that same angle and kind of extends it to what if superheroes were in the real world and their superpowered kids were crappy, spoiled trust fund brats? It's only 2 issues in, so it's kind of hard to tell what it's going to turn into, but if you're looking for a new comic to follow, it's easy enough to get on board with that one, so go support your local comic shop. Now, on the subject of crappy superpowered kids, a favorite of mine is NYX, which was a short-lived series published by Marvel between 2003 and 2005, and it follows a bunch of young inner-city mutants. It's basically like a Marvel Universe spin on the subject matter you would see in a movie like Kids or 13. The star is a teenage raver chick from a dysfunctional family who suddenly figures out that she can just stop time and do whatever the hell she wants, as well as the first comic appearance of Wolverine's female clone, X-23, who's since shown up as a playable character in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and of course as a regular member of the Uncanny X-Force. One ongoing comic that's done a fantastic job of giving a refreshing new take on superhero fiction is Robert Kirkman's Invincible, which has been running for just over a decade at this point. Kirkman is the creator of The Walking Dead, and everything that The Walking Dead does with zombie cliches and tropes, Invincible does that with superheroes, adding a ton of personality and humanity to an otherwise played out concept. The main character, Invincible, is the son of an alien superhero named Omni-Man who suddenly develops superpowers as a teenager and must then figure out how the hell to use them. All the while, of course, he's dealing with school and dating and family problems and so forth. Issue 104 just came out last month, and all of the back issues have been conveniently compiled in collections of various sizes. You can get, little story arc trade paperbacks, you can get bigger hardcovers, or you can get the big omnibus volumes, and of course it's all available digitally, and it's a fun as hell superhero comic, so if you haven't already, go check that one out. Anyway, it's about time I wrap things up. Like I said, these are just a few of my personal favorite examples of different takes on superpowers and superheroes and all that stuff. What do you guys recommend? There is just a ton of super stuff out there. Let me know in the comments and tell me if you have any suggestions for an episode of Study Hall, and I will take it into consideration. There's the bell, children, but now if you'll excuse me. Up, and over there.